Mallory Hartley alongside Greg Powers, Dave Campbell's Texas football. TCU, the Horned Frogs.
On fire.
Hot on the recruiting trail right now. They've got 5 commitments in the class of 2026 so far, 3 of which are defensive linemen. Obviously, they've put a lot of stock and prioritization in the defensive line. One of them being a 4-star, Jesse Ford out of Arlington Martin. Give me your thoughts on him.
Well, he kind of got the ball rolling on what was like a huge, I guess it was recruiting weekend, January 18th to January 20th. TCU picked up 3 defensive line commitments, and Jesse Ford was like the tip of the iceberg, or the one that got the ball rolling downhill. He is a very talented defensive end from Arlington Martin. As a matter of fact, he picked up his first scholarship offer when he was a freshman at Arlington Martin, and he's kind of just been kind of growing up in front of the Texas high school football community's eyes. He was a big dude when he played as a freshman, but now, he's like around 6'5", 260 pounds, very strong on tape. He's got a pretty quick get off for a guy who I would think of as more of like a traditional strong side defensive end, because he's so powerful. He can take on those big and strong blockers at the point of attack. But Ford has also got a pretty quick get off. He's credited for over 20 tackles for a loss last season, so he can get after the ball carrier and make plays behind the line of scrimmage, will apply pressure onto the quarterback as well. Bonafide 4-star, I think, because you just don't build guys in his mold quite often. No. And I like that district. That Arlington district, to me, produces a lot of blue collar, a lot of good defensive linemen come from that district. Yeah. So just something like over the years that I've learned to pay attention to is just like, they're playing in Arlington. They might have that blue collar mentality, that work ethic. And, of course, TCU fans will remember a couple of those guys, maybe most notably Devontae Fields.
Another one that they've picked up recently, Carter Buck out of Lake Travis, technically an edge rusher there. What have you seen in him that you've really been able to admire so far?
So I went and did the Austin Westlake Lake Travis game 2 years ago when Carter was a sophomore, and he was working into that rotation. And it took about, maybe I think actually the first play that he rotated in on that game, he made a play out in the flats for a tackle for a loss. So instantly I'm doing that roster comb, right? I'm looking for who are the young guys on this roster that I need to pay attention to or I might not have heard of before. Well, it took about a nanosecond for Carter Buck to jump out and be one of those guys. Very active. Much of the same things that we said about Jesse Ford, we're going to say about Carter, because he has a hot motor. He never takes any plays off. They do a good job there at Lake Travis. They're one of the most well-coached teams in Texas high school football. They play assignment or technique sound football, so he does what he's supposed to do, snap to snap. He doesn't get out of position. He knows how to hold the edge, keep the edge to make sure that players don't get outside of him, and he does what he's supposed to do every snap. But looking beyond that, I think that he has the physical abilities to turn into one of those monsters at the next level. He's a weight room warrior type of guy, and I think that you're only starting to see this or scratch the surface of his frame potential.
And he'll get to follow behind 2025 edge rusher signee Chad Woodfork.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Out of humble Summer Creek there. But lastly, the third one I wanted to talk about, Duncan McGhee out of Texas High. Give me your thoughts on him.
6'4", 260, 270 pounds. I had a chance to sit down with Coach Stanford at the THSCA coaching school and talk about some of his up-and-comers. And one of the questions that I asked him at that time is that, I've seen Duncan play some offensive line, some defensive line and stuff like that as he was coming up as a younger player. Well, as he's grown and matured, he's I think he's an interior defensive line projection at this point as a defensive tackle. That's where we put him in the rankings for right now. But I think you could probably categorize him as a defensive lineman because I think that he can move around and provide some position flexibility because he could be inside or he could potentially move outside because he is pretty quick off the ball. But he also has a world of frame potential because I think he could hold and play at over 300 pounds in college pretty easily. So I love this get for them. I think that he's another player out in East Texas playing on a team that has a lot of big-time recruits. He might sometimes be more overlooked than he should be. I mean, now
you got Lance Jackson out there too. It's like.
But now he's committed to TCU, a P4 school, right? And that he may stay under the radar as it relates to recruiting rankings. But I think he's a player that TCU fans ought to be really excited about getting on this commitment list because maybe that means good things for him, but based on the chip that on his shoulder that he carries into the next level. But make no mistake, Duncan McGhee, not only one of the best players in East Texas, but one of the best players in the state.
East Texas, defensive line
out
there. I love that. I love it. Of course, 3 of the 5 already committed in the class of 2026 to the TCU Horned Frogs, the other one being wide receiver Brock Boyd out of South Lake Carroll, and then long snapper Will Terry out of Iowa Colony. They're putting together quite the class. Hopefully following a really, really talented class of 2025 that, of course, we've already talked about.
I know that Coach Dykes doesn't want to promise 3 commitments every weekend, so we'll keep you in the loop as news breaks. But I wouldn't look forward to 3 offensive line commitments this week. We'll see. You just have to stay tuned.
We'll see. Keep it locked on TexasFootball.com/recruiting.